Drop a comment to let us know where you're watching from today as we dive into a story that shows how a moment of disrespect turned into a powerful lesson about human dignity. When basketball legend Michael Jordan encountered an arrogant celebrity at a charity gala, nobody expected the evening to end with one man in tears and another standing taller than ever before. The elegant ballroom of the Chicago Grand Hotel sparkled with the kind of opulence that typically accompanied high-profile charity events. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables draped in pristine white linens, while the city's elite mingled with celebrities and athletes, all gathered for what was supposed to be an evening of generosity and goodwill. Among them, Michael Jordan moved with the quiet confidence that had become his trademark long after leaving the basketball court. His custom-tailored suit, a subtle reminder of his continued success in the business world. But this night wasn't about Michael Jordan. It was about Anthony Walton, a decorated veteran who had lost both legs in service of his country. Anthony sat in his wheelchair near the edge of the room, his military medals pinned proudly to his jacket, observing the festivities with a gentle smile that betrayed none of the daily challenges he faced. He had been invited as a guest of honor, representing the veteran rehabilitation program that the gala was supporting. The evening had started peacefully enough. Guests arrived in their finest attire, champagne flowed freely, and the promise of substantial donations hung in the air like perfume. Jordan had noticed Anthony earlier, impressed by the young veteran's dignity and the way he engaged warmly with everyone who approached him, regardless of their status or position. Blake Townsend, a reality TV star whose claim to fame came from a popular streaming series, had been holding court near the bar for most of the evening. His voice carried across the room as he regaled his growing audience with tales of his latest projects and achievements. Jordan had seen his type before, newfound celebrities who confused temporary fame with lasting significance. The first ripple of tension surfaced when Blake made his way toward the buffet table where Anthony was carefully maneuvering his wheelchair. What happened next would transform the elegant charity gala into a moment of reckoning that no one present would soon forget. "Watch it there, buddy," Blake called out loudly as Anthony's wheelchair came within a few feet of him. "This suit costs more than your whole wardrobe." The celebrity's words, meant to draw laughs from his entourage, instead created a pocket of uncomfortable silence in their immediate vicinity. Anthony said nothing, simply adjusting his chair to move around the man blocking his path. His composure remained intact, though a slight tightening around his eyes betrayed his hurt. Jordan, standing nearby in conversation with event organizers, felt his attention drawn to the interaction. Blake, perhaps emboldened by the champagne or his own inflated sense of importance, didn't let it end there. "You know, they really should have a separate serving time for the charity cases. Some of us paid good money to be here." His voice dripped with the kind of casual cruelty that often masked deeper insecurities. The room seemed to hold its breath. Several guests turned away, embarrassed by the display but unsure how to intervene. Others watched with growing discomfort as the scene unfolded. Anthony remained silent, his military training evident in his controlled response to the provocation. Jordan had seen enough. With the same fluid grace that had once made him legendary on the basketball court, he excused himself from his conversation and made his way toward the unfolding scene. His presence alone caused a shift in the atmosphere, like a change in barometric pressure before a storm. "Mr. Townsend," Jordan's voice carried the quiet authority of someone who had earned his status rather than purchased it. "I couldn't help but overhear your comments." The basketball legend positioned himself strategically between Blake and Anthony, his tall frame casting a metaphorical shadow over the reality star's borrowed importance. Blake's face lit up, apparently missing the steel in Jordan's tone. MJ, man, I'm a huge fan. You know, I was just having some fun with... He gestured vaguely toward Anthony, not even bothering to acknowledge him as a person worthy of direct reference. Fun? Jordan's question hung in the air like a challenge. I'm curious about what you find amusing about disrespecting a man who has sacrificed more for this country than most of us could imagine. The words were delivered with the same precision Jordan had once used to sink game-winning shots. The celebrity's smile faltered slightly. Come on, it was just a joke. Besides, this is a high-class event. Some people just don't fit in here. He attempted to maintain his superior attitude, but his voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. Jordan's response was measured, but forceful. Let me tell you about fitting in, Mr. Townsend. This man you're so casually dismissing is Anthony Walton. Before his injury, he led missions that saved dozens of lives. He's earned every medal on his chest through courage and sacrifice, not by performing for cameras. The crowd that had gathered began to murmur. Several phones had been quietly recording the exchange, though no one dared to be obvious about it. Blake's entourage had begun to distance themselves, sensing the shift in social dynamics. While you were building your fame on reality TV, Anthony was building a legacy of service, Jordan continued. The medals on his chest aren't props. They're symbols of the kind of courage that can't be scripted or edited for dramatic effect. Blake's face had begun to redden, a combination of embarrassment and anger fighting for dominance in his expression. Look, I didn't mean any disrespect to the military. I support the troops. I even did a USO show once. Supporting the troops isn't about putting on a show, Jordan cut him off. It's about understanding and honoring their sacrifice. It's about recognizing that the freedom to attend galas like this, to enjoy success and prosperity, comes at a price that men like Anthony have paid on our behalf. The reality star's attempts to maintain his composure were crumbling. What had started as an opportunity to assert his perceived superiority had transformed into a public lesson in humility. Jordan wasn't just defending Anthony, he was exposing the hollow nature of Blake's celebrity-based arrogance. The difference between you and Anthony, Jordan continued, his voice carrying clearly in the now silent room, is that his strength comes from character, not from cameras. His dignity isn't something that can be taken away by thoughtless comments or designer suits. Anthony, who had remained dignified throughout the exchange, finally spoke. Mr. Jordan, I appreciate your words, but there's no need to create a scene on my account. His voice carried the kind of genuine humility that made Blake's earlier behavior seem even more shameful by contrast. Jordan turned to Anthony with genuine respect. Sometimes scenes need to be created so lessons can be learned. Then, addressing the room at large, he continued, this event is about supporting programs that help veterans like Anthony rebuild their lives. It's about recognizing that true worth isn't measured by the price of a suit or the size of a social media following. Blake Townsend, his celebrity armor thoroughly pierced, had begun to realize the magnitude of his mistake. The phone's recording, the incident, the disapproving looks from the other guests, and the quiet strength radiating from both Jordan and Anthony had combined to create a moment of genuine self-reflection. I apologize, he finally managed, his voice stripped of its earlier arrogance. To both of you, I was out of line. The words seemed to physically pain him, but they were sincere. Jordan nodded, accepting the apology but not letting the moment pass without cementing its lesson. Apology accepted. But remember this feeling. Remember what it's like to have your worth questioned, to be judged by superficial standards. Then imagine facing that while also dealing with the kinds of challenges Anthony manages every day with grace and dignity. The evening's energy had transformed. What had started as a potential disaster had become a powerful moment of community and understanding. Other guests began approaching Anthony, not with pity, but with genuine interest and respect. The veteran's story, his service, and his ongoing work with other injured soldiers became the focus of authentic conversations. Blake Townsend quietly left the gala shortly afterward, his entourage notably absent. The next day, without any publicity or social media announcements, he made a substantial donation to the Veterans Program and requested to volunteer at the Rehabilitation Center. As the evening wound down, Jordan sat with Anthony, sharing stories and insights. The basketball legend spoke about his own journey, the importance of using influence responsibly, and the difference between fame and impact. Anthony shared experiences from his military service and his current work helping other veterans adjust to civilian life. The incident would later go viral, not because of Blake Townsend's behavior, but because of the way Jordan and Anthony had transformed a moment of conflict into an opportunity for growth and understanding. It became a reminder that true strength often appears in unexpected places, and that dignity, once earned through sacrifice and service, cannot be diminished by thoughtless words or actions. The evening ended with Jordan making a personal commitment to support Anthony's veteran outreach programs, not just financially, but with his time and influence. The basketball legend recognized in the young veteran the same kind of determination and resilience that had marked his own career. As guests departed the gala, the story of what had transpired began spreading through social media and news outlets. But unlike many viral moments, this one carried a lasting message about respect, dignity, and the true measure of a person's worth. Anthony's final words to Jordan that evening would resonate far beyond the walls of the Chicago Grand Hotel. Sometimes, the greatest victory isn't in winning a fight, but in showing others a better way to measure success. The incident at the charity gala would be remembered not for the initial conflict, but for the way it demonstrated how true legends are made, not by their achievements alone, but by how they use their influence to lift others up and defend those who deserve respect but don't always receive it. The morning after the charity gala, the incident between Michael Jordan, Blake Townsend, and Anthony Walton had spread across social media like wildfire. Video clips captured by guests showed the basketball legend's measured but powerful defense of the wounded veteran, and the moments that followed would spark a conversation that reached far beyond the elegant walls of the Chicago Grand Hotel. Jordan arrived at his office early that morning, his mind still processing the events of the previous evening. The notifications on his phone had been endless. Messages from fellow athletes, business partners, and media outlets all wanting to discuss what had transpired. But his focus was elsewhere. On his desk lay a folder containing information about veteran rehabilitation programs across the country, with Anthony Walton's organization prominently featured. The viral video had captured only part of the story. What the cameras missed was the quiet conversation that took place between Jordan and Anthony after most guests had departed. The veteran had shared his vision for a comprehensive support system for wounded warriors, one that went beyond physical rehabilitation to address the psychological and social challenges they faced. His passion and dedication had reminded Jordan of his own early days, when determination meant more than reputation. Blake Townsend's public relations team had been working overtime. The reality star's social media accounts were suddenly filled with carefully crafted apologies and promises to do better. But Jordan knew that real change required more than carefully worded statements. He had seen something in Blake's eyes before he left the gala, a glimpse of genuine shame that suggested the possibility of transformation. The morning's first meeting brought an unexpected visitor. Ryan Patterson, a prominent sports network executive had arrived unannounced, eager to discuss turning the previous night's events into a documentary special. "Think about it, MJ," Patterson urged, his enthusiasm evident. "We could call it Standing Tall, more than a game. It's about veterans, respect, celebrity culture, everything people are talking about right now." Jordan's response was characteristic of his post-basketball approach to public life. "This isn't about creating content, Ryan. It's about creating change." His words carried the same quiet authority that had silenced Blake Townsend the night before. "Instead of a documentary, let's talk about how your network can support veteran rehabilitation programs. Real support, not just coverage." As the morning progressed, Jordan received word that Anthony Walton had arrived at the Veterans Center for his regular volunteer work, despite the media attention surrounding him. The young veteran had declined all interview requests, choosing instead to focus on his work with other wounded warriors. His dedication only reinforced Jordan's conviction that this story needed to be about action, not publicity. The situation took an unexpected turn when Lauren Galloway, one of Blake Townsend's co-stars, reached out through mutual connections. She revealed that Blake had been deeply affected by the previous night's events, more than his public statements suggested. The reality star had spent the morning researching veteran support programs and had made several private calls to military organizations. Jordan's assistant, Daniel Hayes, entered the office with news that would add another layer to the unfolding story. Blake Townsend had just announced the cancellation of his upcoming reality show season, stating he needed time to re-evaluate his priorities and contribute to causes that truly matter. The entertainment industry was buzzing with speculation, but Jordan recognized the decision for what it was, the first step toward genuine change. By midday, the narrative had evolved beyond the initial confrontation. Veterans organizations across the country were reporting a surge in donations and volunteer applications. Social media platforms were filled with stories of service members and their families sharing experiences that had long gone unheard. The incident had sparked a national conversation about respect, sacrifice, and the true meaning of status. Jordan decided to pay an unannounced visit to the Veterans Center where Anthony worked. He found the young veteran working with a group of recently injured soldiers, his wheelchair positioned alongside theirs as they navigated physical therapy exercises. The scene was far removed from the previous night's glamour, but it carried a dignity that no designer suit could match. "You've created quite a stir," Anthony said when he noticed Jordan's arrival, his smile genuine but slightly uncomfortable with the attention. The other veterans in the room straightened up, recognizing the basketball legend but maintaining their focus on their rehabilitation work. Jordan observed the session quietly, noting how Anthony's presence seemed to inspire confidence in the veterans. Here was leadership that couldn't be learned in business schools or on reality TV shows. It was earned through shared struggle and genuine understanding. As they talked during a break, Anthony shared more about his vision for veteran support programs. He spoke about the importance of community, of creating spaces where wounded warriors could rebuild not just their bodies, but their sense of purpose. Jordan listened intently, recognizing the same kind of strategic thinking that had made him successful both on and off the court. The conversation was interrupted by unexpected news. Blake Townsend had arrived at the center, alone and without cameras. The reality star looked different from the previous evening, gone were the designer clothes and practiced smile, replaced by casual attire and genuine nervousness. Jordan watched as Blake approached Anthony, noting how the celebrity's usual confidence had been replaced by genuine humility. "I know this might seem like a publicity stunt," Blake began, "but I needed to come here to see what real courage looks like." Anthony's response demonstrated the grace that had impressed Jordan the night before. "The hardest battles aren't fought, In war zones, he said, they're fought in our own minds when we have to choose between what's easy and what's right. The three men spent the next hour touring the facility, with Anthony explaining the various programs and challenges faced by wounded veterans. Blake Townsend asked thoughtful questions, taking notes on his phone and occasionally pausing to speak. With other veterans, his reality TV persona had been stripped away, revealing someone capable of genuine growth and understanding. Jordan observed the interaction with satisfaction, recognizing that sometimes the greatest victories come not from defeating an opponent, but from transforming them into an ally. The evening's confrontation had created an opportunity for real change, both personal and systemic. As the afternoon progressed, news arrived that would give the story yet another dimension. Several major corporations had reached out, expressing interest in supporting veteran rehabilitation programs. The incident at the gala had exposed a need that many had overlooked, and now resources were beginning to flow toward addressing it. Blake Townsend made an announcement before leaving the center. He would be using his production company to create a documentary series about wounded veterans, with all proceeds going to support rehabilitation programs. Unlike the previous nights, Blake, this announcement came without fanfare or self-promotion. It was simply a commitment to use his platform for something meaningful. The day's events had transformed what could have been a simple confrontation into a catalyst for change. Jordan's defense of Anthony had not just been about one veteran, it had sparked a movement that was already beginning to show real results. As evening approached, Jordan received a call from his old teammate and friend, Robert Wilson. "No," Wilson said. "When you were playing, you changed the game of basketball. Now you're changing something even bigger." The observation was apt. Jordan had always understood that true influence came with responsibility. The media coverage continued to evolve, moving beyond the viral moment to explore deeper issues about respect, service, and society's treatment of veterans. Jordan's measured response to Blake's behavior had demonstrated how confrontation, when handled with wisdom and purpose, could lead to transformation rather than destruction. Anthony's work at the Veterans Center continued without interruption, though he now had additional resources and support to expand his programs. His quiet dedication served as a reminder that true heroes often work without fanfare. Their impact measured not in social media likes, but in lives changed. Blake Townsend's transformation became its own story. The reality star began making regular visits to veteran centers, not for publicity, but for education. His journey from arrogant celebrity to humble student of service became an example of how privilege and fame could be redirected toward meaningful purpose. The day ended with a simple dinner meeting between Jordan and Anthony, away from cameras and public attention. They discussed plans for expanding veteran support programs, using the momentum of recent events to create lasting change. Anthony shared stories of other veterans who needed support, while Jordan outlined strategies for leveraging his influence to secure sustainable funding. Their conversation returned to the previous night's events, but with a focus on the future rather than the past. Anthony reflected, sometimes it takes a moment of conflict to open people's eyes, but it's what happens after that moment that really matters. Jordan agreed, understanding that their work was just beginning. The incident at the gala had created an opening, but turning that opening into lasting change would require continued dedication and effort. As they parted ways, both men knew that the story wouldn't end with viral videos or public apologies. Real change would come through sustained effort, through programs that helped veterans rebuild their lives, and through a shift in how society viewed and valued service and sacrifice. The day's events had demonstrated that sometimes the greatest impact comes not from the initial moment of confrontation, but from how that moment is transformed into opportunity. Jordan had defended one veteran's dignity, but in doing so, he had helped create a platform for thousands of others to be seen, heard, and supported. What had started as an ugly display of disrespect had been transformed into a powerful catalyst for change, proving that true leadership isn't just about standing up to wrong, but about helping guide everyone involved towards something better. 1 week after the charity gala incident, what had started as a confrontation between a basketball legend and a reality TV star had evolved into something far more significant. The Veteran Rehabilitation Center, where Anthony Walton volunteered, had become the epicenter of a growing movement, with Michael Jordan's influence helping to transform a viral moment into meaningful action. The morning began with Jordan reviewing proposals from major corporations eager to support veteran initiatives. Among them was a comprehensive plan from William Patterson, CEO of a national fitness chain, offering to retrofit their facilities nationwide to accommodate wounded veterans. The businessman had been present at the gala and had witnessed firsthand how Jordan's intervention had sparked a conversation about society's treatment of those who had sacrificed for their country. But not all responses to the movement were positive. Critics had emerged, suggesting that the entire incident had been staged for publicity. Entertainment blogger Jennifer Harding had written a scathing article questioning Blake Townsend's sudden transformation, calling it a calculated attempt to rebrand his image. The criticism might have derailed the momentum if not for what happened next. Blake Townsend arrived at the Veterans Center unannounced, not for a photo opportunity or publicity stunt, but to begin his first official day. As a volunteer, he had traded his designer clothes for simple workout gear, ready to assist in the physical therapy sessions. The reality star, who had once mocked a wounded veteran, was now learning how to help them navigate the challenging path to recovery. Jordan watched from his office as Blake worked alongside Anthony, noting how the young celebrity's famous ego had been replaced by genuine humility. Through the glass walls, he could see Blake listening intently as Anthony demonstrated techniques for helping veterans transfer from wheelchairs to exercise equipment. The transformation was real, evidenced not by public statements, but by quiet, dedicated action. The morning's activities were interrupted by an unexpected visitor. Richard Anderson, a prominent network executive, arrived with a different kind of proposal. Instead of the sensationalized documentary others had pitched, he suggested a series focused on veteran rehabilitation stories, with proceeds going directly to support programs nationwide. The approach aligned with Jordan's vision of creating sustainable change rather than temporary media attention. Anthony's reaction to the proposal revealed the wisdom that had impressed Jordan from the beginning. "If we do this," the veteran said, "it needs to show the whole truth, not just the inspiring moments, but the daily struggles, the small victories, the reality of what these men and women face." His words carried the weight of personal experience and genuine concern for his fellow veterans. The meeting was joined by Michelle Rodriguez, a rehabilitation specialist who had been working with wounded veterans for over a decade. She shared statistics that painted a sobering picture of the challenges faced by injured service members returning to civilian life. The numbers strengthened Jordan's resolve to use his influence to create lasting change rather than just momentary awareness. As the day progressed, Jordan received news that would add another dimension to their efforts. Several professional athletes, inspired by his stand at the gala, had reached out to coordinate a nationwide campaign supporting veteran rehabilitation programs. Leading the initiative was Nathan Baker, a rising basketball star who had grown up watching Jordan play and had a brother serving in the military. The afternoon brought a session that no one had expected. Blake Townsend sat down with a group of veterans to hear their stories, not for his documentary, but for his own understanding. The reality star who had once dismissed Anthony's presence at an upscale event now listened intently as veterans shared experiences of sacrifice, struggle, and resilience. One of these veterans was David Harrison, a former Marine who had lost both arms in combat. His story of learning to adapt, of fighting through depression and finding new purpose, moved Blake to tears. The celebrity's reaction wasn't performed for cameras. There weren't any present. It was the genuine response of someone whose perspective had been fundamentally altered. Jordan observed these interactions from a distance, recognizing that true change often happened in quiet moments rather than public declarations. He thought back to his own journey, how basketball had taught him that lasting success came from consistent effort rather than spectacular moments. The day's events took an unexpected turn when news broke that several of Blake Townsend's former reality TV colleagues had criticized his transformation, suggesting it was all an act. Leading the criticism was Victoria Watts, a fellow reality star who had built her brand on manufacturing drama. Her social media posts mocked Blake's convenient conversion and suggested the entire incident had been orchestrated. Blake's response to the criticism demonstrated how far he had come. Instead of engaging in a public spat, he simply posted a single photo of himself working with veterans at the rehabilitation center, accompanied by the words, "Some things matter more than ratings." The authenticity of his changed perspective was evident in what he chose not to say, rather than what he did. Jordan's phone buzzed with a message from Robert Wilson, his former teammate who now worked in sports management. Wilson had been watching the situation unfold and offered an observation that captured the essence of what was happening. "You're showing them that real influence isn't about who you can dominate, but who you can lift up." The afternoon brought another significant development. Anthony Walton received approval for an expanded rehabilitation program he had been developing. The program would combine physical therapy with career training, helping wounded veterans rebuild not just their bodies, but their futures. Jordan had quietly provided initial funding, but the program's success would depend on continued community support. As evening approached, Jordan hosted a meeting with several corporate leaders who had expressed interest in supporting veteran programs. Among them was Michael Henderson, CEO of a major sportswear company, who proposed creating a line of adaptive, athletic wear designed specifically for wounded veterans. The proceeds would support rehabilitation centers across the country. The discussion evolved beyond immediate support to address systemic changes. Jordan emphasized the importance of creating sustainable programs rather than one-time publicity. Events. His experience in business had taught him that lasting impact required long-term commitment and structured support. Anthony joined the meeting's final hour, sharing insights from his work with veterans and highlighting areas where corporate support could make the most difference. His practical knowledge, combined with Jordan's business acumen, helped translate good intentions into actionable plans. The day concluded with a private dinner attended by Jordan, Anthony, and Blake. The three men, whose lives had intersected so dramatically at the gala, discussed how to maintain momentum and ensure their efforts created lasting change. Blake, humbled by his journey over the past week, listened more than he spoke. During dinner, Anthony shared news that brought the day's events full circle. The Veteran Rehabilitation Center had received more volunteer applications in the past week than in the previous year combined. People inspired by the viral video had been moved to take action, proving that sometimes it took a moment of conflict to spark a movement of compassion. Jordan reflected on how a single confrontation at a charity gala had grown into something far more meaningful. The incident had exposed not just one celebrity's arrogance, but society's broader neglect of those who had sacrificed for their country. More importantly, it had created an opportunity to address that neglect in tangible ways. The evening ended, with plans for the future rather than celebrations of the past. Jordan, Anthony, and Blake each committed to specific actions that would help maintain momentum and create lasting change. Their discussion focused not on the viral moment that had brought them together, but on the work still to be done. As they parted ways, Anthony shared a perspective that captured the essence of their evolving mission. What happened at the gala was about one person's dignity being defended. What's happening now is about ensuring that dignity is never questioned in the first place. The day's events had proven that true change wasn't about viral moments or public declarations. It was about consistent effort, genuine commitment, and the willingness to transform confrontation into collaboration. The movement that had started with Jordan defending one veteran's dignity was growing into something that could help thousands of others. As night fell over Chicago, the lights of the Veterans Center remained on, a symbol of the ongoing work that no longer depended on celebrity involvement or media attention. Inside, volunteers continued working with veterans, their dedication a reminder that real change happened not in dramatic moments, but in the quiet, persistent effort to make things better. 1 month after the charity gala that changed everything, Michael Jordan stood at the podium of the newly expanded Veteran Rehabilitation Center. The facility, now renamed the Walton Jordan Veterans Support Center, had become a symbol of how a moment of confrontation could spark a movement of transformation. As he prepared to address the gathered crowd, Jordan reflected on how far they had come from that fateful evening. The morning had begun with a private ceremony, away from the media spotlight. Anthony Walton, accompanied by a group of veterans who had been with him since the beginning, cut the ribbon to open a new wing dedicated to comprehensive rehabilitation services. The expansion had been funded by a coalition of supporters who had emerged in the wake of the viral confrontation, but its spirit came from Anthony's unwavering vision of what veteran support could be. Blake Townsend was present, though few would have recognized the humble volunteer in casual clothes as the same arrogant celebrity from the gala. He had spent the past month working alongside veterans, learning their stories, and using his platform to advocate for their needs. His transformation had become a story of its own, but not in the way entertainment media had expected. The ceremony was attended by several unexpected guests. William Garcia, a prominent business leader who had witnessed the gala confrontation, announced a nationwide initiative to prioritize veteran hiring in major corporations. The program had been developed in consultation with Anthony and would focus not just on employment, but on creating truly inclusive workplaces for wounded veterans. Jordan's speech that morning avoided mentioning the incident that had started it all. Instead, he focused on the work being done at the center and the impact it was having on veterans' lives. He spoke about Michael Patterson, a recently injured soldier who had found new purpose through the center's programs, and Rebecca Morrison, a veteran who had gone from rehabilitation patient to program coordinator. The audience included faces both familiar and new. Robert Wilson, Jordan's former teammate, sat beside Daniel Hayes, now the center's operations director. Their presence represented the bridge between Jordan's past influence in sports and his current role in social change. Among them was also Richard Anderson, whose network had begun producing thoughtful documentaries about veteran rehabilitation, focusing on stories of resilience rather than sensationalism. The morning's events were interrupted by news that demonstrated how far the movement had spread. Veterans centers across the country were reporting increased support and resources, inspired by the model developed at the Walton Jordan facility. The ripple effect of that one confrontation had grown into a wave of positive change. Anthony's speech followed Jordan's, and his words carried the weight of personal experience combined with a vision for the future. He spoke about the importance of dignity and rehabilitation, about how respect and understanding were as crucial as medical care and physical therapy. His message resonated deeply with the audience, particularly when he described how the center's programs had evolved to address the full spectrum of challenges faced by wounded veterans. Blake Townsend's role in the ceremony was deliberately minimal, reflecting his understanding that this wasn't about personal redemption, but about contributing to something larger than himself. When asked to speak, he simply shared stories of the veterans he had worked with, keeping the focus on their courage, rather than his own journey. The afternoon brought a series of demonstrations of the center's expanded programs. Jordan watched as Anthony led a group through innovative rehabilitation exercises, his wheelchair moving smoothly between equipment specially designed for wounded veterans. The basketball legend noted how the facility had transformed from a basic rehabilitation center into a comprehensive support hub. Victoria Watts, the reality TV star who had initially criticized Blake's transformation, had requested to visit the E-Center. Her arrival caused some tension, but Anthony's gracious welcome set the tone for what would become another story of perspective changed through direct exposure to the veterans' experiences. By day's end, she too had gained a new understanding of what truly mattered. The center's success had attracted attention from military officials and government representatives. Captain James Whitehead, a high-ranking officer involved in veteran affairs, toured the facility with Jordan and Anthony, taking notes on how its model could be replicated nationwide. The conversation focused on practical steps to expand the program's impact while maintaining its core values. Throughout the day, Jordan observed the interaction between Blake and Anthony, noting how their relationship had evolved from that first confrontation. The two men now worked together seamlessly, their past conflict transformed into a powerful partnership for positive change. Their example had become a testament to how understanding could replace arrogance and how respect could overcome prejudice. The afternoon's events included the launch of a new initiative spearheaded by Michelle Rodriguez, the rehabilitation specialist, who had been instrumental in developing the center's programs. A comprehensive approach to veteran support would now be shared with facilities across the country, creating a standard for how society could better serve those who had served it. Jordan's phone buzzed with messages from other athletes and celebrities who had been inspired to support veteran causes in their own communities. Nathan Baker, the young basketball star, had launched a similar program in his hometown using the Walton Jordan Center as a model. The movement was growing organically, each new initiative adding to its momentum. As evening approached, the center hosted a dinner for veterans and their families. The event was notable not for its grandeur, but for its normalcy. Wounded veterans and their loved ones sharing meals and conversations, supported by a community that understood their challenges and respected their dignity. Jordan sat with different groups throughout the evening, listening more than speaking. Blake Townsend's documentary series about veteran rehabilitation had begun airing, but with a different focus than originally planned. Instead of centering on his own journey of transformation, it highlighted the stories of veterans themselves, their challenges, triumphs, and ongoing needs. The series had already begun influencing public perception of wounded veterans and their capabilities. The day's formal activities concluded with an announcement that would ensure the center's long-term impact. A group of corporate leaders, led by Michael Henderson, had established a permanent endowment to support veteran rehabilitation programs nationwide. The fund would provide sustainable resources for centers implementing the Walton Jordan model of comprehensive support. As the crowd began to disperse, Jordan found himself in conversation with Anthony about the future. They discussed plans to expand the program's reach while maintaining its integrity, to share its success while preserving its core values. Their discussion was joined by Blake, whose insights from working directly with veterans had become invaluable to the program's development. The evening ended with a quiet moment of reflection. Jordan, Anthony, and Blake stood in the center's main hall, surrounded by photographs of veterans who had found new purpose through the program. Each image told a story of challenge overcome, of dignity restored, of life rebuilt with the support of a community that understood and cared. Anthony shared a perspective that captured the essence of their achievement. What started with defending one person's dignity has become about restoring dignity to thousands. But more importantly, it's about changing how society sees and supports those who have sacrificed for it. The impact of their work had extended far beyond the viral moment that sparked it. Veterans across the country were finding new hope and support through programs inspired by the Walton Jordan model. Communities were learning to see beyond injuries, to recognize the strength and potential in every wounded warrior. Blake's final words that evening revealed how completely his perspective had changed. "I came here thinking I had everything figured out. But these veterans have taught me what real strength and dignity look like. That's a lesson I'll never forget." As the lights dimmed in the center, Jordan reflected on how a confrontation at a charity gala had evolved into a movement that was changing lives. The incident had exposed not just one person's prejudice, but society's larger failure to properly honor and support its veterans. More importantly, it had created a pathway to address that failure in meaningful, lasting ways. The story that had begun with Jordan defending one veteran's dignity had transformed into a legacy of respect, support, and understanding. It served as a reminder that true change often started with a single moment of standing up for what was right, but its lasting impact came through the dedicated effort to transform that moment into meaningful action. As they left the center that evening, the three men whose lives had intersected so dramatically 1 month ago knew that their work was far from over. But they had created something that would continue to grow and evolve, touching lives and changing perspectives long after the viral video was forgotten. The Walton Jordan Veterans Support Center stood as a testament to how confrontation could lead to collaboration, how understanding could replace ignorance, and how respect could transform lives. It was a living legacy of the principle that true strength lay not in status or celebrity, but in the courage to stand up for dignity and the commitment to support those who had sacrificed for others.